Welcome back to another episode of Particle Word for Word. Today's story is Can Drying Them Out Stop the Cane Toad's Invasion of WA? Written by Kat Williams. Read by Evan Thayer. Okay, let's start with a villain. Not your classic movie monster. No scales or razor teeth. Just a squat, squishy toad with a smug little face. But this one, it's a master of chaos. The cane toad. It hops, it poisons, it multiplies. And if you live in Western Australia, it's officially on the way to your backyard. So, what are we going to do about it? Well, nothing. Which is a first for Western Australia. You know, with the emu and fly war and all that. But seriously, we aren't using fancy traps or toxic bait. We're just letting the land dry out. And weirdly, it might actually work, because when it comes to surviving a dry season in the Kimberley, cane toads are kind of terrible. They're basically walking water balloons. And in the middle of a WA dry spell, that's a death sentence. This episode, it's about using nature's own rules to hit pause on a decades-long invasion. Let's hop in.
Can drying them out stop the cane toad's invasion of WA? They started hopping into WA, now they are hopping into trouble. The WA government, researchers, traditional owners and pastoralists have joined forces against this invasive, poisonous pest. Cane toads entered northeast Western Australia 15 years ago. Since then, their numbers have exploded, and efforts to slow the toad's trail of ecological destruction have failed. Now, scientists are drawing a line in the sand to slow the spread of the toxic amphibian, the toad containment zone. On the hop, Western Australian Premier's Science Fellow, Professor Ben Phillips, is heading up the project. He is a professor of population biology at Curtin University who has studied cane toads for many years. Cane toads were brought to Australia in 1935. They were distributed up and down the eastern seaboard by the sugar industry in 1937, says Ben. They've been spreading ever since. They entered WA in 2009. In the last 15 years, cane toads have completely colonised the Kimberley. Now, they're spreading into the Pilbara. The ultimate coloniser. What makes cane toads excellent colonisers? They can move very long distances. When they first arrived in Australia, Ben says cane toads were dispersing at around 10 kilometres per year. They're speeding up. Now they're moving at 43 kilometres per year, more than 4 times faster than their speed 80 years ago. They also have a very high reproduction rate. A single female can lay up to 30,000 eggs in one sitting. Not all those eggs survive, but it gives you a sense of how many offspring they can produce, says Ben. Modelling shows that 90 to 95% of the Pilbara would be occupied by cane toads without immediate action. This would directly impact between 10 and 24 native species. In some sense, they're a magnificent animal that's very good at what it does, says Ben. But it's really confronting to see them arrive in a place that you know well and have the impacts that they have. Watching their advance during fieldwork in the Northern Territory was astonishing, he says. We could literally go out every night and see the invasion front moving forward every week. In the zone. The toad containment zone is the latest weapon in the fight against the toad. The WA government will fund the first stage of a 150-kilometre barrier between the coast south of Broome and the Great Sandy Desert. Cane toads can't travel through the desert because they need water to survive through the warm, dry winter. So to move into the Pilbara, they must travel down a slim corridor. Nearly all of the permanent water in this corridor is agricultural water. A lot of that agricultural water is accessible to toads currently because it leaks and there's no fencing around the other parts of the infrastructure to prevent toads from getting to it, says Ben. If we do this toad containment zone across about a 150-kilometre stretch of this corridor, all of the science says that the cane toad invasion will stop. A 150-kilometre area seems large, but Ben is confident. It's not rocket science, it's plumbing. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Agricultural water infrastructure will will be upgraded in 150 locations across the toad containment zone. A single leaky pipe can sustain 1,000 toads, Ben says. Water troughs the toads can access will be replaced or fenced with troughs set high enough to keep the toads out. The toad containment zone has been developed from more than a decade of scientific research and was a key recommendation from the 2019 Federal Senate inquiry into controlling the spread of cane toads. Ben is confident the landscape barrier can work and says it will function in a similar way to a fire break. This toad break will be very effective at stopping cane toads, he says. This really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Alright, so we're not waging war here. We're pulling the plug. Literally, cane toads can't handle dehydration. Their bodies leak water faster than you can say ecological disaster. And when artificial waterholes are removed or fenced off, they croak. Not metaphorically. For real. But the native wildlife, the goannas, the quolls, the birds, they've got dry season survival down to an art. They've been doing it for thousands of years. They know where the secret soaks and shady hideouts are. Cane toads? Not so much. And that's where this tactic shines. It's not about carpet bombing the ecosystem. It's precision. It's restraint. It's letting the land speak and letting the invaders dry themselves out. Honestly, it's kind of elegant. And let's be clear, we made this mess. We brought the toads in. Thought they'd be pest control heroes. Instead, they became the pest. So this solution, simple, low-tech, quietly powerful, feels like the kind of poetic justice the environment deserves. Now sure, it's not perfect. The Kimberley is massive. Monitoring it is like herding ants with a broom. And cane toads? They're stubborn little beasts. They've survived cars, cold snaps, community cleanups. This is just one tactic in a bigger fight. But maybe it's the kind of thinking we need more of. Not every problem needs a flamethrower. Some just need a little finesse. And that opens up bigger questions. What else could we solve by stepping back? What other invaders, biological or otherwise, could be outpaced not with brute force, but by letting nature do what it does best? Maybe progress isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less, but doing it smarter. For more science stories like this, visit Particle WA at particle.scitech.org.au.